Good morning. Today we are reviewing for Unit 5. Practice test will be tomorrow, real test on Thursday. I'll be working on your help sheet for your test. I'm going to go through some things that you should have on your help sheet to help you. So if we look at CO 36, we started off our unit with those algebraic expressions with addition and subtraction. You're going to want to put this table on your help sheet so you know which words mean add, which words mean subtract. So remember, some things that we had put in there were addition was the sum, the total, plus, or subtraction, we had difference, subtracted by, and then these last two I'm putting stars next to. Less than and subtracted from. Why did I put stars next to those? We need to know all of them. What's special about these two? Anime? Those are the ones that we have to flip. So if we have 9 minus 5, we could say 5 less than 9. But notice how we started with 5 less than 9, but it's really 9 minus 5. So we have to know the two that I star are the ones that you have to flip the order. Okay? So we would write that as 5 less than 9, but it's written 9 minus 5. So on this objective, we had to take their phrases and write the expression, and then we were given the expression and we had to write the verbal phrase. Any questions that we want to go over on this one? The big things to remember were these two need to be flipped. Okay. So let's look at our next objective. It's very similar, but instead of adding and subtracting, we are multiplying and dividing. We just did CO 36, our first objective. Now we are on CO 37, multiplying and dividing. So Connor, you don't want to have a help sheet? Okay. Okay. All right, so what are the words that we have in our table for multiplying and dividing? Connor? Times, multiply, product, groups of, what words do we have for division? Zelda?
We have divided by, quotient, and into groups.
So our multiplying, groups of, and division is into groups. So they're similar but very different. So you want to make sure that you know the difference between the two. Again, you'll be given some verbal phrases that you need to write the expression for, and you'll be given some expressions that you need to write the verbal phrase for. Any questions on any of these? Okay. Oh my, I did not want that. All right, CO 38. Now we started evaluating our expressions using multiple operations. So we need to know what perm nos means, and we need to know how to follow it. Parentheses, exponent radicals, multiply, divide, add, subtract. Remembering that if they are on the same level, It's whichever one you come to first. So if you come to a subtracting before you add, you subtract first. Just because we say add, subtract, doesn't mean you have to add first always. It's whatever you hit first, reading from left to right. So really, it should look like this. And it's whichever one you come to first, going from left to right. It's just easier when we write it out in one line and call it the cute name of PERMDAS. But always, there's kids who think, oh, I have to add before I can subtract. It's whichever one you hit first, going from left to right. So not only are we working with our order of operations, we are also plugging in those variable values. One thing that I found is it's easy to make a simple mistake when you're given 4 different values to plug in the wrong value. So be careful that you're plugging in the correct value. What operation is it when there is a number right next to the variable? Multiplication. It does not mean A is a 4. It does not mean that 2 becomes 24. Okay? There is an operation in here. We need to multiply it. So make sure you remember that when it's right next to the variable, when it's right next to parentheses, it means multiply. Any questions on this objective? We feel good on it? All right, let's look at our next one. PO 39. I can solve an equation with addition or subtraction. So remember, we had our 3 different ways of solving this. Logic, opposite operations, and fact families. It's super easy to do this math. People are saying, oh, I can do it in my head. I can use logic. I know how to do this. Those opposite operations do come in to play a part in our math as we go on. So we want to make sure that we are paying attention to how to do those opposite operations. I've had numerous people say, oh, Miss Kim, I really don't want to do opposite operations because I can do this all as mental math. Why is it that I want us to start using the steps that I put on there, Amanda? In the future, our math is going to be more complicated, and we will not be able to do mental math with it at all. I gave the example to one of our friends that my stepnephew is very, very, very good with math, and he made it all the way to calculus, being able to do mental math because it just comes so easy. And then, I think it was pre-calc. All of a sudden, he came home one day and he cried to his mom and said, oh my gosh, Mom, when did I get so stupid in math? I was always good at math. And she said, what are you talking about? He said, I can't do it in my head anymore. We're not going to be able to do the math in our head. And we shouldn't expect to be able to do it. I am giving us the steps to follow because you will come to a time when you cannot do it in your head, and you will make a lot of mistakes if you don't follow the steps. I'm trying to prepare you for the future. Madison.
Do we have to show all these steps on the test?
No.
Okay. So we can pick one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So on the test, yeah, you can pick one. Logic, opposite operations, or fact families. I do want you to tell me what it is that you're choosing. So if you're doing the logic, put what the question is, okay? And then put the answer. So you do have, I don't want to just see the answer. I want to know how you came up with the answer. Marina.
So on that test, is it kind of like the one where it like shows us the different type of ways that you have to do, or you just have to know all of them?
On the test, it's going to be, here's the formula or expression, equation. Here's the equation, solve for the variable.
Okay, And so it's not gonna like give us an example of logic or like different families?
Nope.
Okay, so I have to know that.
Yes. Yep, so you have to know which method you are going to use to solve it. Are you gonna use logic and write out the question? Are you gonna use the fact family? Are you going to use the opposite operations? I do want you to show me how you're solving it. So if you're doing mental math, that's the logic. Okay, so just write out what you're doing in your head. So what number plus 12 equals 19? So down here, what number plus 14 equals 25? Write out the question that you're asking yourself in your head. Zelda.
Talking about the mental math, you can't see the mistakes you're making in your math, in the math you're doing, if you don't write it out.
Correct. Excuse me. Any other questions on this objective? So then we will be having some writing your own equations using addition and subtraction. Write two equations with a variable value of 5. So remember how we did that. We used 5 and we wrote an equation. Then you take that 5 out and you put your variable. It's that easy. Okay? If it says the variable value is 5, you want to put your variable in for the 5. So you write an equation that uses the 5, and then take the 5 out and put a variable in for it. Any questions on that? All right. Then we have almost the same thing, but this is with multiplying or dividing. So we have 6n equals 30. We talked about if the number is right in front of a variable, it means multiply. So 6 times n equals 30. So you could use logic. 6 times what number equals 30? And then put your answer. I do want you to write the question that you're asking in your head on the paper. So if you're using logic with your mental math, write it on the paper. Okay? If you're doing opposite operations, you're doing opposite the operation that is being shown. So if it's multiplying, you're going to divide by 6 on both sides. Just like in the last objective, if we were adding, we would subtract it out on both sides. Whatever you do to one side, you do to the other. And then at the bottom, again, creating your own equation. This one wanted a variable value of 8. So 8 times, let's say 5, equals 40. Then I'm going to take the 8 out and put in my variable. I'm going to make it look mathy, and say instead of n times 5, I'm going to put 5n. It means the same thing, and it's more professional looking. You're being a real mathematician. Okay, I would accept it this way too, but this way looks more mathy, right? We're looking like a real mathematician now. So any questions on how to create our own equation? Feeling good with that? So remember that opposite operations that we talked about. If we were multiplying, we divide both sides by it. If we were adding, we subtract both sides. If we were dividing, we multiply both sides. So you're doing that opposite math. Then we have CO41. I can evaluate expressions with fractions using addition and subtraction. So we have to review the rules for adding and subtracting fractions. We're doing variables with them. So we've worked with fractions in the fall. Now we're working with variables and we're putting them both together. So we need to review what it means to add and subtract fractions. Who can tell me the rules? What are our rules that we can write on our help sheet? When we're going to add or subtract fractions, what do we need? Zelda?
A common denominator.
So you need common denominators. And whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. So if we need to get a 10 for our denominator, whatever you multiplied your bottom by to get to 10, you multiply your top by to get to 10. Madison, Lilia, what you guys trying to figure out?
Oh, I was just asking if you were going to ELA.
You do go to ELA after this, yes, at 10:15. Second step, we have common denominators now. What do we do? Two fourths plus 3/4. What do we do, Ruby?
Add or subtract the cost.
Add or subtract across, top or bottom? Top only. Denominator stays the same. Very important to remember that denominator stays the same. Are we done? Why not, Ruby? Simplify, simplify, simplify. Always check, can I divide the top and the bottom by the same number? Can I simplify? Just simplifying once is not always enough. You might have to simplify more. Simplify, simplify, simplify. Remember, if we have mixed numbers, if we want to turn them improper. So if you're given a mixed number, make it improper. So if we have 2 3/4, how do I make that improper? Layla? Multiply that denominator and the whole number, and we add the numerator. So 4 times 2 is 8, plus 3 gives me 11. Oops, 11/4. Denominator always stays the same. And that looks easy. Okay, so we want to make sure that we are working with improper fractions, not mixed numbers. I do have paper towels on the back counter if you need some more.
It's not that much.
Okay. Any questions about adding or subtracting fractions? If we have 3 sets of fractions, you need to find the common denominator for all 3 fractions. Adding or subtracting across the top only. Okay. Next objective. Still using fractions, but this time we are multiplying or dividing. What are the rules for multiplying or dividing our fractions? Layla. You gotta talk louder. Multiply straight across. So the first thing you want to do is take care of mixed numbers. So first thing is convert mixed numbers. So multiply and add. Then you are correct, we multiply across. Are we done? What's my last step, Zelda?
Simplify.
Simplify, simplify, simplify. That's for multiplying. What if we are dividing? What is our first step? Again, convert mixed numbers. Our second step is going to be different. What is that second step? Hannah Mae,
Flip it.
flip what?
The second one.
So first I'm gonna flip divide to multiply and flip, you're right, the second fraction to its reciprocal. So if it was 2/3, that becomes 3/2. So you flip only the second fraction. There are a lot of us who still flip that first fraction. You only flip the second fraction. Then we continue on like we are multiplying. Multiply across and simplify. Okay? So the big thing with dividing is you flip divide to multiply and you flip the second fraction to its reciprocal. Only the second fraction. Any questions on this objective? And then we have the one that we corrected today. Two-step equations. Remember, two-step equations, we do SAD mode. Subtracting and adding first, then dividing and multiplying, then exponents and radicals, then parentheses. So opposite operations with those two steps. If we are adding 17, we subtract 17 from both sides. 17 minus 17 is 0. 25 minus 17 is 8. Then here we are multiplying by 2, so we need to divide by 2. So 2 divided by 2 is the 1, and 8 divided by 2 is 4. What big thing should we do to make sure that we're doing our equations right? What should we do after we've solved it? How do I check my answer, Connor? How should I check it, Hannah Mae?
The opposite operation.
So I have what my variable equals. I'm gonna put it into my equation and see if it works. So I'm gonna say 2 times 4 plus 17, does that equal 25? So 2 times 4 is 8 plus 17. And on this side it's 25. 8 plus 17, I'm going to use my calculator. Instead of just saying, yep, it does, I'm going to use the calculator and make sure I'm doing my math correctly. Does 8 plus 17 truly equal 25? So, truly, when you check it, I know it seems tedious, but taking the extra 3 seconds to do that is a lot easier than having to do a whole new practice work and retake on it. Okay, check it on the test so we don't have to redo that whole objective. Okay, so when we do the test, do all the tedious nitty-gritty little things so that way we're mastering it, we show what we know, and we don't have to do the retakes. All right, it's okay to do practice work and retakes to make sure we have it mastered. We just want to catch all of the little math mistakes that we make. I'd rather us be doing practice work and retakes for things that we truly don't understand to make sure we can master it than having to do it for simple math mistakes. Okay, simple math mistakes, let's try to take care of on the test. All right, so then we have our Math 6 review. Remember, we always have the M6Rs. So for this test, we are doing PO4, PO12, PO28, and PO31. So let's work backwards from book 2 here. PO31 was on our last test. Let's refresh our memory as to what it means. PO 31, I can order fractions, decimals, and percentages. When we get fractions, decimals, and percentages all mixed up like that, how do we put them in order? Zelda,
You can change it to a percent, decimal, or a fraction.
we want them all to be the same. Change them all to percents, change them all to fractions, change them all to
But
decimals.
ordering them, you have to put them in their original size.
Correct. So we change it to all be the same. I'm not sure why people are closing up their books while people are packing up. You should have your book open to PO 31. This is review for you, not for me. When I was scrolling back to PO 31, you should have been turning back to PO 31. What is our magic number when we work with percentages? Amanda? 100. So we always do our decimals out to that 100th place. The second decimal place is the 100th place. Our percentages are a fraction with 100 on the bottom. So for this one, we wouldn't want to turn them all into fractions because there's no fractions there. I would turn 71 hundredths into 71%. 0.3. What percent is that? 0.3. Madeline? 30%, because we want to go out to that 100th place, so we need that. So now I can look 28%, 30%, 71%, 40%. So I'm going to say, okay, putting them in order, we've got 28%, 0.3, 40%, and 0.71. So your final answer should be in the original form, but in order to figure out the order, you're going to want to be comparing percents to percents, fractions to fractions, or decimals to decimals. So figure out which one to convert it to. Our next review question will be from PO 28. So turn back to page PO 28. Oh, that's in book 1. If you don't have book 1 with you, that's okay. I will be opening it up on the board. If you do have book 1 with you, open it up. All right, we're going to go this way now. So I'm going to do, what did I say it was? PO 4. We're going to work our way up to 28 since I'm going this direction now. So PO 4 is the first review question. Estimating and rounding whole numbers and decimals. Oh, this one, there are a lot of us that had a hard time with rounding. So on your help sheet, you can write thousands. We did this for a lot of us back in the fall when we first did this test. Decimal. Remember, there is no ones place. We go to the tenths, hundredths, and thousands. And you know, if you were one of my friends that struggled with this, and you need to write that on your help sheet. There were a lot of us that needed it. And it's okay. Use the help sheet so we get it right. What is the rule for rounding? Zelda?
5 or more ways to score 4 or less, let it rest.
So if we are rounding to the 10th place or 100th place, we look at the number after it. If it's 5 or more, we're going to raise it up 1. If it was 4 or less, it stays the same. So we always need to remember how to round. Big one is knowing our place values. Which one is the 10th? Which one is the 100th? So which place am I rounding to? Our next review question comes from PO 12. And if you didn't get all of this written down, you can watch the review video again at home to add that on. PO 12. I can write a fraction in its simplest form. Oh my, we're already doing that in our objectives that we're working on for this test, simplifying. So I sure hope we all get this one right. We've already talked about simplifying, dividing out top and bottom by the same number, dividing down as low as you can go. So we're doing it for our regular test. We should be able to do it on that review question. And the last review question is PO 28. I can write proportions and solve proportions. So if we have 2 cups for 3 batches and 18 cups for 27 batches, what does my proportion look like? Who remembers how I would write that proportion? We all need to know this. Anna?
Like, 2 cups on top and then 3 batches on the bottom.
Yep. And that equals 18 cups on top, 27 batches on bottom. So that's how you would set it up with your labels. Cups and cups are both on top, batches and batches are on bottom. So we can see it's a proportion because I multiplied by 2 by 9 to get 18 and 3 by 9 to get 27. I'm multiplying both the top and bottom by 9. So to write your proportion, 2 cups over 3 batches equals 18 cups over 27 batches. They are proportionate. Any questions on the proportion? So I know there's going to be a lot of us that forget how to do proportions on the test. Tomorrow is the practice test. Make sure you look it over. Because then we come down here. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not done. We come down here and there's a question that we have to answer. So we have to solve for it. Your famous recipe for barbecue sauce uses 2 cups of brown sugar per batch. How many cups will you need to make 7 batches? How do I solve that? I have some people trying to figure it out. Raise your hand so I know. My hearing is a little off with my cold, so I don't know who's all saying what. So Connor, what are you thinking?
2 over 1.
2 cups for 1 batch. And that equals what?
7 batches, or 14 cups over.
I'm not asking you to solve it. I'm asking you to tell me what to write to solve it. So do I know how many cups?
No.
So I'm gonna put my question mark there with the cups. Cups on top, cups on top.
And then you put 7 batches.
7 batches on the bottom. So how did I go from 1 batch to 7 batches? I multiplied by 7. Whatever I multiply the bottom by, I multiply the top by. You are correct, it would be 14 cups. Okay, but we have to know how to set it up in order to find the answer. Okay, you have to know how to set it up in order to find the answer. Our practice test is tomorrow, real test on Thursday. We are not moving. I don't know why I hear chairs scraping. It is still class time. I am still recording. If you are watching this elsewhere, I hope you are well. And I hope to see you soon. Have a wonderful day.